Cheston also looking ahead to this recruiting stuff, saying odds we pull Christian Miller, Kamari Wilson, Julian Humphrey, and Jaheim Singletary. Boy, it seems like there's growing buzz maybe about each of those names. And so while cleaning the board and sweeping the board on that may be a difficult pull, there's certainly none of those names right now that you wouldn't say that Georgia appearingly is in a pretty good spot with. So I feel pretty good about that. Jim McLaughlin says, I just don't see this game being close. I hope not. I mean, obviously, listen, I said this on yesterday's show, that when you have all the buzz kind of cornered in the market when it comes to college football conversation and then you don't play for Saturday, there's a little bit of an out of sight, out of mind thing that takes over at that point. And I'd love to see Georgia get that buzz back. Right now, Ohio State's getting a lot of that buzz. Ohio State went on the road and scored, 50 points at Indiana. Now, you may not be very impressed with that, and I'm not. But they did seem to kind of collect some of that buzz for themselves based on the way they played a week ago. Oklahoma barely beat Kansas. But once again, Caleb Williams is kind of generating some buzz by taking the football from his running back and helping convert the fourth down there. And so Saturday, to me, against Florida, it's a hated rival, so you want to blow them out just because of that reason alone. But it's also that chance to remind folks, as we said yesterday, why you were number one to begin with. So there is that. Mike Hughes says both those recent Florida commits are trending towards UGA, and that could certainly be the case. So are we up on all the other platforms now? All right, good stuff. And it sounds like everybody's hearing us okay, and we're kind of settled in here and having a good time on all of that. So I feel really good. DogFan86 says, don't forget about the Braves tonight. That's right, Game 1 of the World Series. We are locked in on that, and there's nothing better this time of year than to roll through the baseball during the week. Obviously, no bigger games than the Fall Classic itself, and then get ready for the Dogs in Jacksonville on Saturday. Boy, it's just a great time to be a sports fan. Great time to be here in the state of Georgia. I've said this on some of the radio interviews that I've done. You want to live in a community that matters. You want to live in a state that has this much going on. Because, listen, there's never going to be enough good sports to go around. Some areas seem to corner the market on that more so than the others. The SEC community has kind of cornered the market of the best college football for a long time. And I also saw this, and we'll start the regular show after this. I saw this great, I guess you call it a meme, where it's like, you got SEC fans that all hate each other, but they all seem to kind of come under the together under the umbrella of the Atlanta Braves a little bit. Braves country is the state of Alabama into Mississippi. The Braves have a minor league team in Pearl, Mississippi. Obviously, the Carolinas, longtime Braves fans. A lot of folks, and especially that northern part of Florida, they would consider themselves Braves fans too. So this is like the one thing that sort of brings a lot of SEC country together underneath that umbrella of the Atlanta Braves, which I think is an extraordinary thing. So good luck to the Braves tonight. Game 1 of the World Series there in Houston. Obviously, a lot on Georgia and Florida as we get ready to roll on today. We'll talk about the quarterback stuff. I think Kirby Smart's actually done a favor to those of us who want to see how this quarterback thing plays out and to the quarterbacks themselves in terms of the expectations here. I think he's been extraordinarily, possibly even uncommonly clear on all of this. So we'll talk about that today on the program. Bad news for Florida. A lot of heat on Dan Mullen for what's not happening from a recruiting standpoint. You better believe we'll have some fun with that. But before that, off the top of the program today, how cool is it to see Jordan Davis getting a chance yesterday to respond to some of the buzz that we've been a part of here, the hashtag JD to NYC, pushing Jordan Davis as a Heisman candidate, pushing Jordan Davis as the guy that should win the award as a representation for what the entirety of the Georgia defense has been. Davis's response to all that, to me, is the signal of why he's supposed to win the award in the first place. So we'll talk about all of that as DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented by Engineered Solutions of Georgia, begins right now.
Today's episode of DawgNation Daily is brought to you by Engineered Solutions of Georgia. Dial 678-ESOG now for a solution to your foundation and waterproofing problems.
Presented by DawgNation.com. This is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. Here's your host, Brandon Adams.
I don't ever really make much of a secret about being what I am. I'm just sort of naturally myself. And I guess if you go back and look at the ancestry, maybe at some point in time I had a great-great-great-grandfather, something that was like a circus ringmaster or some sort of carnival barker, because I have always just enjoyed a good degree of hype. People make fun of me for being a pro wrestling fan or something like that. But the truth is I kind of like that pro wrestling style of entertainment where things get hyped up and you make things seem as big as you can possibly make them. You put big headline above the marquee. I've just always kind of liked that kind of thing. And as said before, I'm a little bit of a carnival barker by trade sometimes. I don't mind that. To me, that's all really fun. And so it's kind of with that spirit around here that we've been pushing the hashtag JD to NYC, Jordan Davis as the rightful winner of the 2021 Heisman Trophy. Even though it's an incredible long shot, defensive players typically don't get any mention for this award at all. Certainly defensive linemen get even less than that. Understanding all of that, it's still just kind of a fun thing to get going. Davis seems to be the perfect candidate for all of this, and to watch this thing kind of snowball and take off over the course of the last few weeks, I would say has been a really cool thing. Now, admittedly, while I enjoy doing all of this, the truth is I wouldn't want Kirby Smart to behave the same way on this that I do. If Smart were to get to a podium at a press conference and be, shouting out platitudes and bragging and patting folks on the back, something about that would seem a little unseemly, right? It would seem a little bit unbecoming if the coach of the Georgia Bulldogs were pushing his own players as aggressively as I am. That's, to use a phrase I use from time to time, that's just not very presidential to be out pushing your own guy for that. You need to let me do that. I'm more than happy to be the guy that's the attack dog on something like that, pushing this and trying to make it a big thing. And it'd be the same thing if Davis himself were doing this. For instance, even though I'd love it if Davis would eventually do the Heisman pose during a game, I would get a big kick out of that. The fact of the matter is, if Davis was leading his own Heisman Trophy campaign, there'd be a little something about that just wouldn't feel quite right. Going into the Florida game on Saturday, if Davis was saying, hey, watch what I'm about to do. I'm about to show the world why I'm supposed to be the Heisman Trophy winner. Something, but that would not quite feel the way that it's supposed to feel. In other words, let me do that for you, and you just go about the business of playing football. Now, the good news is you don't have to tell Jordan Davis that. He already knows that. And this is, to me, the reason why Davis is the true Heisman Trophy candidate that he is because Davis understands the way that he represents the Georgia defense overall. And it was actually kind of cool yesterday to hear Davis get asked about some of the stuff that's being pushed on a show like this, where we've made a big deal about Davis being a Heisman finalist, having a chance to win the award. Obviously, that's been noticed by a lot of other folks there as well. And Davis was asked directly about this yesterday. And his response in all of this is just about perfect. And for all the fun we've had leading into the game against Florida on Saturday with Davis, the fact that everybody just seems to get what it's about. This is not about putting Davis on a pedestal that's higher than every other Georgia player. This is giving Davis a chance to be the avatar that represents all of the Georgia players, especially on defense. That team-first mentality that has driven all of this year. The willingness to share playing time together, but also share glory and certainly share spots on the stat sheet. I don't think anybody embodies that better than Jordan Davis. So Davis was asked yesterday in a cool media appearance what it feels like to have all the chatter on a show like DawgNation Daily, presented by Engineered Solutions of Georgia, for you to win the Heisman Trophy. And Davis's answer is exactly what you would expect it to be. Now, the audio quality on this is not great, so I'm going to play one of these clips for you. If you go to YouTube, the DawgNation YouTube page, you can actually hear a little bit better. Sometimes it doesn't translate super well when you try to record it. But here is Davis being asked about the Heisman buzz that's being generated around him. Now, having posted odds at BetUS and all the other things that have kind of grown here, the Fine Bombs and the Reese Davis and everybody else talking about this. This is what Davis thinks about all of that. I think you're going to like this.
It's cool. It's definitely cool. But, at the end of the day, I'm more worried about the team awards and the team, if we win or not. All the individual stuff will come and go. But at the end of the day, we want to make something special for the season.
Do you feel like it's realistic? I mean, have you given yourself even cause to think about what it would be like to go to New York and
honestly, I haven't really stopped to think about it. We just moving on week by week. I don't even know when the ceremony is, if that gives you any idea. So, I'm not really worried about that. I'm more concerned about winning and, doing the best I can for the team.
I think there's a lot of times in football, stuff like this, players saying, I'm not worried about that. I just want to have the team success. it ends up feeling a little bit phony and feeling a little bit fake. Every player knows that's what they're supposed to say. It's easy to say what you're supposed to. It gets its own level of reward just for, kind of painting by numbers and giving the canned statement. But in Davis's case, doesn't that feel true? Doesn't it feel authentic? My guess is he probably doesn't really know when the Heisman Trophy award ceremony takes place. My guess is he probably isn't stopping to think much about his own chances of winning that, because admittedly it is a long shot for a defensive player to even be in that discussion. But the fact that Davis is so humble about all of this, and later on in the interview he talked about the fact that he's never really been about himself. He's never really been about pushing his own accolades. He's very content to be a part of a defense that itself doesn't really have that standout superstar. Now, we've said before that the reason why there is no current standout superstar in this Georgia defense is because they're all standing out. They're all playing so well. Even in the ESPN clip we played for yesterday in talking about Davis winning the Heisman, Devontae Wyatt also got mentioned. Jalen Carter also got mentioned. You could mention Trayvon Walker too. Clearly, Nakobe Dean's having an incredible season at linebacker there as well. So the lack of standout superstar on this Georgia defense right now is probably related to the fact there are so many guys that could potentially be standout stars on their own team somewhere else. They've kind of formed this cohesive unit together, but all the more reason why Davis stands as the representation for that, because he seems to get it, and he seems to be fully content. In fact, he's told us a million times that he's happy to have no stats at all so that other guys around him can get those stats, and that the dominance that he pursues creates coattails that allow other players to be dominant there as well. This is why this is such a cool thing, and why Davis is the perfect representation of what this Georgia defense is. The word I keep using is an avatar. I don't think there's a better way to say that than that. The picture, the face of this Georgia defense is Jordan Davis, because his spirit and his attitude seems to be the fuel that's made this Georgia defense great all season long. Now, you heard our buddy Chip Towers, as a part of that last clip, asking Davis a question. Do you ever consider the possibility that this might be, and I believe the word that Chip used was realistic. In other words, could this really happen? Do you give yourself any time to think about the fact that maybe this could happen? And here's where I don't want to sugarcoat it with all of you. For as much as we have fun with the hashtag JD to NYC thing, for as much as we love the way we've kind of pushed the Jordan Davis thing and folks have kind of gotten involved with this, for as fun as this has been for us, realistically speaking, it is still an uphill climb to actually make this a reality, right? To move it past just the chatter stage into something that could actually occur. Admittedly, that's a little bit of an uphill climb still, and that's why a day like Saturday against Florida is so important, at least in terms of this particular cause right here, because off the Kentucky game, there was a lot of post-game talk about Jordan Davis that has kind of continued over the course of the last couple of weeks, getting the attention of the SEC Network and ESPN and everybody else. And obviously, it would help push this along even further if Davis would do something big on the field on Saturday against the Gators. Now, the byproduct of that is it also helps Georgia have a chance to win that game more so if Davis makes the big play. But if you want to keep this buzz going or allow it to even grow beyond where it is now, doing something big against the Gators would clearly be a big step in that direction. Now, the fun thing to think about there is that's actually something that Georgia has going for it this particular Saturday they didn't have a year ago. Clearly, one of the more disappointing losses in the Smart era was that game to Florida a year ago, allowing those lousy, stinking Gators to win the SEC East. No Georgia fan likes to consider that, but the thing that all Georgia fans know is Georgia's pretty shorthanded in that game last Saturday. That's not an excuse, or I should say last year. That's not an excuse because Florida still won the game, but it is a reality that Georgia did not have some of its best players in that game. Jordan Davis in particular, one of those guys, was not able to play. But he will be on the field for the Dogs this year, this upcoming Saturday against Florida. And his impact, my guess is, at least if you take the words of Kirby Smart from yesterday, Davis' impact against the Gators this year are going to be felt. This is Kirby talking about what Davis can do, along with the rest of this defensive line, against Florida.
I think Jordan being back and being healthy is very important to us in terms of the run game and being able to control the run game. And his ability to play multiple snaps will be important. He's got to play in this game because he's a dominant player up front. But they've played against him before. I mean, they know Jordan's a good player, and we'll need a lot of guys to play because those defensive linemen, they can't play more than 30 to 35 snaps a game.
So listen, obviously there's a team of guys there along the Georgia defensive line that are getting a lot of stuff done. But once again, in that clip, you heard Smart use the word that he uses so much to talk when he describes Davis. That's the idea of domination, the dominant player, the big, physical, overwhelming force that himself can be kind of a one-man run-stopping crew. Florida's been better rushing the football this year that we've been used to seeing in the Dan Mullen era, but it gets harder to do that against the Georgia defense. And no one helps spurs that Georgia defense along more so than Jordan Davis. So the buzz around Davis is real. It is actually happening. And Davis gets a chance on Saturday, as humble as he is, to allow that buzz to grow even more by how he plays against the Gators. And the good news is, if Davis does what he needs to do to grow his own individual accolades, it certainly appears that the team itself will benefit from that as well, as the Dogs, alongside Davis, maybe take another step towards a championship. My name's Brandon Adams, and this is DawgNation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented today by Engineered Solutions of Georgia. And glad to have you with us, no matter how you get to us live on video, starting at 9:45 on our First and 15 at DawgNation.com and the DawgNation app. Also available on video on all the various platforms, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch. Did I get them all? Obviously, podcast platforms, the Apple Player, Spotify, everything else in between there. Of course, world-famous DawgNation.com. We post the show each and every day. We're on the radio at noon on Athens Sports Radio 960 The Ref. That's always a really fun thing to be a part of there as well. And we certainly appreciate our friends at Engineered Solutions of Georgia for making it all possible. When it comes to very important things that homeowners deal with, I'm talking about foundation waterproofing issues, no one's better at solving those problems for you than my friends at ESOG. The word solution is in their name. They are a solutions-based company to the problems that you face. And when we've had rainy seasons like we've had this fall, you see that water creeping into your basement, your crawl space, garage sometimes. Engineered Solutions of Georgia knows how to fix that. Obviously, those foundation issues, one of the scariest things that a homeowner can think about. Cracks showing up in your walls that make you realize you may have an even bigger problem. Well, sometimes it's actually not such a big problem. Sometimes it's a fairly easy fix. But either way, you want ESOG on the job. They've got 2 full-time engineers on staff, which means you're dealing with really smart people. But also Engineered Solutions of Georgia, proud partners of UGA. It's fun to do business with those that support the Dogs. Also, longtime friends of ours here on DawgNation Daily there as well. So we certainly appreciate that and appreciate all of you that show such great support for them. So give them a call. Number could not be easier to remember. Simply dial 678-ESOG now. That's 678-ESOG now, and that'll get you in touch with Engineered Solutions of Georgia. All right. We'll get Connor Riley here as part of a Kroger Fresh Take for the first time in our brand new DawgNation World Headquarters studios. That's coming up here in just a little bit. Before that, though, I want to go around the doghouse here today, presented by Georgia's own credit union. And this is actually really interesting. There is a little bit of negative buzz circling around the Florida program right now. And that buzz might be to the benefit of UGA eventually. But for now, I have to admit, it's just sort of fun to watch Florida squirm its way through this. For the second time in about a week, Florida has now lost its highest-rated public commit. Last week, it was Shamar James, the 4-star linebacker who exited the Florida program. And now, shortly after that, you've got the 4-star defensive back, Julian Humphrey, who's done the same thing. I'll show you this on the screen here as we're around the doghouse, presented by Georgia's own credit union, of Humphrey making his intentions known to leave the Florida class and explaining his reasons for doing so, saying he'd like to give a huge thanks to the entire Florida coaching staff for giving me an opportunity to be a part of the Gator family. But after a long conversation, a lot of thinking with my family, I've decided to decommit from the University of Florida, Julian Humphrey, in a very nice... There's something about the really fancy edit to go along with the decommitment message here that I think is pretty funny all the way around. Now, listen, we've been talking about Humphrey on this show now for several weeks, just given the fact that it seems like Humphrey's relationship with Georgia is kind of growing. And in fact, you don't have to go back very far on Julian Humphrey's Twitter timeline or Instagram as well to see those pictures of him decked out in red and black. He tweeted back on October 3rd, red, red, red. And you see him there with the really cool looking jersey, also the red lights on at Sanford Stadium. It's a great photo shoot for him there at UGA, much to the chagrin at the time of Florida fans, and you understand why with good reason now that he's decommitted from the program. But can we put aside for the fact that for a moment anyway, Shamar James and Julian Humphrey both might end up at the University of Georgia? That's obviously big news, and we'll talk about that a lot in the time to come. But for the moment, can we focus on the way all of this seems to be intensifying a little bit of negativity around Dan Mullen at Florida? Now, any coach in the SEC, when you've lost 3 games before the halfway point of the season, is going to deal with some negative talk. But around Mullen, so much of this right now is centering on his inability to recruit quality high school talent and hold on to the quality commits that he does have. In fact, let's go back to Mullen's press conference from yesterday. Now, this is the week of the Georgia game, one of the biggest games of the season for Florida, regardless of what its record is. But Dan Mullen's activity during the off week is one of the things that came up in yesterday's press conference. And whether Mullen himself was on the road and recruiting, and what exactly is going on with Florida right now from a recruiting standpoint. I want you to listen, and this is relevant for what's going to happen on Saturday. I want you to listen to how defensive Dan Mullen gets up at this entire line of questioning. It's almost as if this is like a political press conference as opposed to a football coach's press conference. This is almost like a politician being pressed on a scandal more so than a coach being asked about his recruiting. Very tense in Gainesville yesterday. If you're a UGA fan, you're going to like this. Here's Dan.
On the recruiting front, were you able to go out and recruit?
Yeah, we had our coaches all out on the road. I can't go into where everybody went specifically, but our coach, we had coaches out on the road.
But you personally didn't
I'm not going to get into the specifics of where everybody went and what's going on with it, but
not you?
I'm not even going to comment on any of that stuff of who was where, when, why, and how.
I don't know who that reporter is, and there's a chance even if I knew his name, I might not know who he is. But good for him for asking that question 3 times. He asked the question. Mullen kind of gives him the stiff arm. He comes back again. Mullen gives him another stiff arm. And then one more time for good measure, he's like, but, Coach, did you go out on the recruiting trail this past week? And it's almost like the what did you know, when did you know it stuff. I mean, there's a pretty good press on the part of that reporter to say, were you personally on the recruiting trail this past weekend during the off week, given the fact that your recruiting class once again kind of seems to be in shambles? And Mullen just tries to sidestep the whole thing of, I'm not going to get into where we were, what our staff was doing, what I was personally doing. But, man, that entire exchange there between the reporter and Mullen seems to be pretty reflective of the feeling right now, because the reporter's not asking that question if the Florida fans weren't pushing for that to be asked. And on the heels of losing a James and a Humphrey, there are going to be some questions about what is going on with Dan Mullen's recruiting. In fact, let me kind of drill down on this a little bit more. Some of you know who Pat Dooley is. Dooley, a veteran, a guy who's covered the Florida Gators, used to work for the Gainesville Sun, now kind of he's kind of retired, I guess, from that role is probably the best way to say that. But he's been around the Florida program for as long as anybody has. So Dooley goes on the Feinbaum show yesterday, and the subject of this Mullen press conference came up. And I think that Dooley here is a pretty good probably a thermometer to kind of read the temperature of what Florida fans are on all of this. This is what veteran, longtime Florida reporter Pat Dooley said on the Paul Feinbaum show yesterday related to this exchange with the reporter between Dan Mullen and the feeling of Florida fans around Mullen all the way around now. Once again, this is juicy for a coach who seems to be teetering on the brink. Here's Pat Dooley.
Well, that doesn't sound like a yes to me. Sounds like a no.
But we know Kirby Smart was in New Orleans the other night watching Arch Manning. That was pretty well documented.
Yeah, well, that there's a different philosophy there, and I think that people are kind of getting fed up with them losing recruiting. I don't know. I don't know if they don't like to recruit. I mean, there's a lot of people believe that Todd Grantham's not a good recruiter, and then Dan Mullen is not the best recruiter.
That's a long answer that I kind of shortened down to a more manageable soundbite when Dooley at the beginning of that clip says, that doesn't sound like a yes, it sounds like a no. What he was referencing there was Mullen saying he wasn't going to say whether he was on the recruiting trail this past weekend or not. That's Dooley saying that no, if he's sidestepping the chance to answer that, that means he must not have been out and recruiting. And all of this, I think, speaks to the tension that exists around Dan Mullen right now and Todd Grantham right now, his defensive coordinator there at the University of Florida. Now, if you're a Georgia fan, this is a really fun thing. First of all, it's always nice to have a program that's so poachable that you can go and steal potentially a Shamar James. We'll see how that works out. Or potentially go steal a Julian Humphrey. We'll see how that works out. Just because they're on the open market doesn't mean they're coming to Georgia, but they very well might. Now, James may still end up at his home state of Alabama, or, Humphrey's also recently visited Texas A&M. So it's not just Georgia here that's the competition for Florida when it comes to the Humphreys and the James, but Georgia obviously stands to benefit from that, and we'll talk about how UGA could do that in the weeks to come. But for now, just park on this idea that all of this happens at a time in which Florida also has a pretty tough game on the field on Saturday. And who knows what buttons Kirby Smart may be pushing behind the scenes to get these decommits to occur and to get all this to unfold here. Clearly, Smart seems pretty comfortable with the heat that's growing around Dan Mullen, and sometimes there aren't coincidences in life, and maybe the Humphrey decommitment's an example of that. But for those of us who don't like Florida very much and don't shy away from sharing that, for those of us who don't like Dan Mullen very much and have a good time in terms of poking at him in this rivalry, it's a very, very good week to be a Gator hater. And my guess is the happy times as far as Gator haters are concerned continues on the field on Saturday there as well. That is Around the Doghouse, and it's presented today by our friends at Georgia's Own Credit Union. Obviously, one of the things we love about Georgia's Own Credit Union is your chance to get involved in one of the cool things that Georgia's Own Credit Union can provide for you, which are these Visa Signature and Platinum cards. Now, these cards have a lot of features and benefits, which makes them worth exploring for you. One of the things that they can certainly provide for you is the chance to get contactless payments, right? That's really very convenient, very easy. That's fun to be able to enjoy. But you can also earn flex rewards that can be used for just about anything. I'm talking about gift cards or travel, cashback, merchandise. You can also get up to a $150 bonus when you open one of these new Platinum or Signature cards. Now, there are some restrictions that apply, so make sure you check out the details on all of that. In fact, to learn more about that and to apply for your card today, go to georgiasown.org. That's the website, georgiasown.org. And you can check that out today. It's great to have Georgia's Own Credit Union with us as a part of Around the Doghouse. All right, here on DawgNation Daily, presented by Engineered Solutions of Georgia, we're going to get ready to turn our attention now back fully to the Georgia Bulldogs here. And we're going to do so with a look at what's happened at practice and all the preparations for Georgia moving into the game on Saturday against the Florida Gators. Let's get ready to do all that right now, welcoming Connor Riley to our program as a part of a Kroger Fresh Take.
From Athens and across the SEC or wherever the recruiting trail may lead, here's a DawgNation.com insider.
And we'll say hello to Connor Riley here on DawgNation Daily. It's part of our Kroger Fresh Take here. Obviously, Connor watching everything happening with UGA very closely as the Dogs get ready to take on Florida on Saturday. And Connor, if you don't mind, if we dive into this with you, let's, I guess, start with where I just was a moment ago. The decommit of Julian Humphrey on top of the Shamar James decommit from last week. These are not great times around the Florida program in terms of the tension growing around Dan Mullen for what specifically has kind of always been his biggest issue, and that's the issue of recruiting. And the fact that Mullen's having to try to put this fire out with the media and his local fan base ahead of the game on Saturday, I find the timing on all of that to be pretty interesting and frankly pretty curious.
Do you remember what Charles Barkley once said about Angola, the country?
No, remind me.
So 92 Olympics, dream team, they're getting ready to go play Angola. Angola did not have nearly the level of talent that the United States dream team had. And Barkley was sort of asked, hey, what do you know about Angola? And he said, I don't know nothing about Angola, but I know Angola's in trouble. I don't know nothing about Dan Mullen, but I know Dan Mullen is in trouble when it comes to the recruiting mishaps. I wrote about this morning. It seems like Kirby Smart and Dan Mullen are going in opposite directions at this point in time. Kirby Smart is on the way up. Dan Mullen pretty clearly is on the way down. He is 2-6 in his last 8 games against Power 5 foes, and he's just not recruiting well right now. I went and looked up last night after the Humphrey decommitment. Florida has one top 100 recruit that is committed to their program in the 2022 recruiting cycle. I believe they are 9th in the SEC in recruiting at this point in time. Georgia has 8. And so a gap in year 4 where you figure, all right, Mullen has now put enough on tape to show recruits, hey, this is what we're able to build. Last year, they had one of the best offenses, not just in that college football season, but in recent memory. And it hasn't translated to any extra recruiting success that comes with that. So if Mullen can't do it now, the question is, with all the success, and I use that in air quotes there, 8-4 last season, and at best 8-4 this season, if by year 4 you're not recruiting better, if you're not even trying to make up the gap between you and Georgia, your biggest rival, when is that ever going to happen?
So there's no way to keep this from being awkward, but while you were talking, I accidentally unplugged my headset, so I really didn't hear anything that you said. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to give you a chance to answer it. I would like for you to cover the screen so people can't see me.
Okay.
I'm then going to get up out of my chair, walk over, try to plug this headset back in, and then we'll see if we can get this train back on the tracks here a little bit. So I'm sure that you gave a terrific answer to everything about that. Let me ask this specifically about Humphrey and James, though. You obviously follow the recruitment of both these guys pretty closely. These are names that have been talked about a lot on our show over the course of the last week. How how well positioned do you think Georgia is right now for either of these two guys, both these two guys, or really however you want to take that?
Well, I think Humphrey makes a lot more sense. We've heard a lot more chatter about him. He was there for the Arkansas game at the beginning of the month. I think he is the name that between the two of them right now, I feel more confident about potentially ending up in the Georgia recruiting class. However, James, it's not a coincidence that he chooses to decommit from Florida days after visiting Georgia, and so they're both top 100 players. I see the board a little bit clearer at that cornerback position where Humphrey's pretty clearly been targeted as a need now. I think he's potentially a replacement for a guy like Deion Bowie, who seems pretty solid in his commitment to Texas A&M at this point in time. Whereas James, they have C.J. Washington at that linebacker spot. They have Jalen Walker. They're committed as well. They bring in Shmuel Munden and Jamon Dumas-Johnson, who, in talking to people around the Georgia program, I continue to hear exceptional things about what Jamon Dumas-Johnson is going to be able to do next year when he's able to see the field more frequently.
Oh, yeah.
So, between the two of them right now, I probably feel more confident predicting Humphrey to end up in this class, given sort of the need in the secondary with where they are at depth and sort of the relationship that has been built there over the past couple of months.
Let me do one more thing on the topic of kind of Dan Mullen, what he's dealing with, then we'll move on, talk about some other things related to Georgia. One of the things that comes up with the audience sometimes is, and it's kind of like a joke, but it gets said so frequently that I think some of the people that say it aren't joking. They say something to the effect of, I hope Dan Mullen never leaves Florida. In other words, what they're saying is they feel like Mullen is mediocre enough, and the kind of, I guess, popular meme is that Dan Mullen sort of turned Florida into Mississippi State, the place that Mullen used to work. And there's this thought that as long as Mullen is at Florida, there won't be a moment in which Florida is a true long-term threat to UGA. And Connor, I understand like where some Georgia fans are going when they say that, but I don't quite believe that myself. I think that continuity can be a powerful ally for a program. And the longer you allow Mullen to fester in Gainesville, the more likely it becomes that eventually he might kind of figure something out that can make him more of a thorn in Kirby and UGA side than he might currently be. In other words, there is a certain level of greed that I have as a Georgia fan. And it's not that I think that Saturday's game is a definite pushover. The fact of the matter is Florida could challenge UGA. Pretty much anything can happen. It's not an impossibility that Florida could threaten. But if Georgia does have a chance to punctuate what's been a bad 7 or so days, 10 days for Florida in the recruiting trail, with another bad loss in the field to be the fourth of the 2021 season for the Gators, and if you could do some things after that to push Mullen out the door, ending the Dan Mullen era at Florida is a good thing. Even if there's a chance that Florida hires a better coach after Dan Mullen they currently have right now, a better recruiter, it's still worth the effort to end the Mullen era if you've got a chance to. So in other words, being greedy in this rivalry, I still think makes some sense.
I could not disagree with you more.
Is that right?
Point in time. I actually agree with the sentiment out there that the longer that Dan Mullen is at Florida, the better it is for Georgia. Dan Mullen is who Dan Mullen is as a head coach at this point in time. I believe it's year 12 or 13 for him as a head coach, dating back to his time at Mississippi State. He's not changing who he is. He's not going to suddenly become this fanatical recruiter that is signing top 3, top 4 classes. So you know what you have in Dan Mullen at this point. And if he beats you once every 4 times or once every 5 times, and that's sort of the tax that you have to pay there, Georgia will gladly take that if they're winning 75, 80% of the games against Florida, so long as Dan Mullen is there. The wheels would have to completely come off of Florida for them to move on from him this year.
That's exactly right.
And I'd be very surprised at that. Now, the buyout is relatively Florida-friendly there, so if they just had enough with Dan Mullen, they could. But I do think if you project ahead a little bit, and I think we all expect Anthony Richardson to see a lot of time on Saturday, and he'll be the starter going forward. Florida can bounce back a little bit next year and sort of sweat. And there are some changes that Mullen can make. Obviously Todd Grantham is a pretty easy and obvious one to change there. Bringing in, I don't want to make the direct comparison to what Mark Richt did, but bringing in a fanatical recruiter type like, say, Jeremy Pruitt. I'm not saying that Jeremy Pruitt can be brought in there, but in that same of mold, I think there's maybe some changes that you can make there. But long-term, every day that Dan Mullen is there and a championship caliber coach, like Steve Spurrier was, like Urban Meyer was, is not the head coach at Florida, that's a huge win for Kirby Smart in this Georgia program.
Let me move on and talk about something else we kind of addressed a moment ago. I'm having so much fun with this Jordan Davis stuff because people just seem to get it. Davis himself seems to get it. Kirby Smart, I think, seems to get it based on the things that Smart has said. Georgia fans seem to get it. This idea that as much of a long shot as it might be, and literally it is a long shot, you can bet this right now at very long odds, but as much of a long shot as it is that Jordan Davis will win the 2021 Heisman Trophy, the fact that it's getting the buzz that it's getting for all the right reasons, the fact that Davis represents the team-first nature of this Georgia defense, the fact that he's such a gregarious personality, and obviously his presence on the field creates a level of domination for the space that he occupies that does open up opportunities for other players. I just love right now that everybody seems to be on the same page. Whether this happens or not, and admittedly some more stuff needs to occur for it to get even bigger than it is right now, but whether it happens or not, the fact that everyone's kind of singing from the same hymnal on this right now, I think speaks to the good nature of UGA fans and DawgNation overall.
Jordan Davis has the same Heisman odds as DJ Uiagalelei does right now.
Right.
We need to fix that. We need to get that fixed going forward. DJ Uiagalelei got benched on Saturday.
But here's the thing, though. The fact that you even can go to a betting house and see a defensive tackle's name on the list is itself quite the accomplishment. And if you want to make the Heisman thing more real, you got to have the big moment, right? You got to get a tackle for loss in AR-15, or you got to. My ultimate wish list is the big power set around the goal line to catch the touchdown pass. That would be a big step in that direction. So to make it more real than it is right now, clearly you've got to add some highlights to go along with the good-natured quotes, but this is all just really fun for me right now. And I think the UGA fans themselves are having fun with it too.
Yes, well, if you ignore the mainstream media hyping this up and latching onto this, as opposed to, I still believe in my heart of hearts the correct player to hype up and potentially win a Heisman Trophy, Nakobe Dean. If you ignore that aspect, I think it shows the vibes around this Georgia program right now and how positive they are. There aren't these lingering questions that obviously still exist about, is this team good enough to beat Alabama? Is Kirby, going to fix this offense? Yada, yada, yada. The fact that we're talking so much about a Georgia defense, and specifically a Georgia defensive tackle who does not register a lot of stats, I think shows, A, what Kirby Smart has built, and B, the sort of cachet that he has to say, hey, look, in an age where, and I've been as guilty of this as anyone, defense doesn't really matter anymore. For a defense to come out and play this well and to have a defensive tackle who doesn't register stats to be our best player, I think says a lot about the strength and visibility of this Georgia program at this point in time.
I think you're right. And I also think it says this, is that it has been a little bit of a reboot of not only does defense matter, but rush defense in particular still matters, because clearly football at the professional level has become a lot of a quarterback's game. And, so much of that game is about, who's got the better quarterback on any given Sunday. The college football game's a lot like that too. We've had historically good quarterbacks winning national championships the last few years, and it seems like so much of the game is moving away from rush defense. Kirby Smart's made this clear a lot over the years that he still felt like a big part of the championship formula was being able to stop the run. And at times, Connor, I have to admit that when I watched the way that things seem to be trending around in football, I was almost left to wonder, is Smart really right about this? Has the game changed more than he's giving it credence to in terms of maybe just the run game overall being less relevant than it used to be? Well, when you see how good Georgia has been and the tip of the spear, the focal point of all of that has been its rush-stopping efforts, and everything matriculating seemingly off of that, not only is it kind of cool to see defense matter again, but to see rush defense in particular be a part of a championship formula and fuel for championship success, I kind of find that to be a little bit cool too.
One of the things that I think makes this defense so dominant and so different, I would say, than what we've seen in recent years, because if you look statistically, the rush defense numbers aren't all that different from what we've seen in recent years with Georgia, but it's the way opposing teams approach running on Georgia is a lot like how Ben Simmons approaches shooting.
Yeah.
It's the issue isn't that he can't do it, it's that he refuses to do it.
Right.
You look at the Clemson game, you look at the Kentucky game, those teams decided very early on in those games, hey, we can't do this. We're just not going to be able to run the ball. And being that one-dimensional, even with having very legitimate concerns in the secondary, I think just makes it so much easier to play defense where you're not even having to guess or think about more than a second, is this team going to run the ball in this situation? So being that dominant on defense to where you have teams just saying, hey, we're just not even going to try to run the ball, I think makes playing defense a lot easier. And when you have the talent in this Georgia defensive front that you have, makes getting after the pass rusher pretty easy.
It's our Kroger Fresh Take with Connor Riley right now, and obviously Kroger getting ready for all the fun stuff for Halloween. Now, you can get big savings on the candy you need, the decorations you need, and all the stuff to make October the 31st, which is the day after the Georgia-Florida game. I'm having to kind of keep all that straight because I want to be getting back from Jacksonville in time to be with my family, and clearly I wouldn't miss that for the world. But all the great stuff right now is at Kroger. Big savings on it all. In fact, if you go to Kroger.com/Halloween, you can find out a lot more about that. That's Kroger.com/Halloween. Kind of the time we have left, I want to talk about the Georgia quarterback situation for a moment, and a pretty strong belief that I have in that I think that Kirby Smart is doing all of us a favor, those of us who care about what happens between these two quarterbacks, Stetson Bennett and JT Daniels on Saturday, those of us who are just curious about it, and the players themselves that are involved in all this. I think Smart's words as of late have been incredibly clear, and I think that he's leaving no room for doubt in terms of how all this is going to be decided. You've got a situation where your guy that you named starting quarterback before the season began has gotten hurt, and the guy that took over for him has played well. In a lot of situations, a lot of football teams, there might be room for some confusion related to that. Is it the old guy's job? Is it the new guy's job? How's this going to play out? But Smart, and we said this a lot last week, and a lot of what Smart said yesterday was really an echo of what we said a lot on last week's show, that the issue for JT Daniels seemingly has been the fact that he has not been healthy enough to be himself during practice. He's either practiced but not been able to be fully JT Daniels, or at times not able to practice at all, getting the rest that he needs to get over the injury. But Smart, in so many words, whether it be to Chris Lowe at ESPN.com or to the rest of the media there yesterday, has said, we are watching in practice to see if JT Daniels can be JT Daniels, the guy that we once thought was better than Stetson Bennett. If he's back to himself, then seemingly he'll be better than Stetson Bennett again. And if during practice, if he's not outperforming Stetson Bennett, then the simple takeaway on that is, well, he must not quite yet be fully healthy. Therefore, the healthier quarterback is probably the better option. I don't think you have to read a lot into what Smart's saying right now. I don't think you have to guess and wonder what's going on. For once, when it comes to quarterbacks, Smart, I believe, is being pretty clear. Do you agree with that?
So I do agree with that. I think he's making it very transparent, and because this is something we've talked about off air for a while now. JT has to earn this in practice.
Yeah.
And he did that last year. He did it in the offseason. I think that's a big reason why Kirby Smart came out and named him the starter when he did back in the spring. And I'm reading Seth Wickersham's book on the New England Patriots and their rise. I would absolutely recommend it if you're a sports fan of any kind. Even if you hate the Patriots, it's really well reported and there's a lot of cool stuff in there. And I read up on the Tom Brady, Drew Bledsoe thing, where Bledsoe was kind of the guy, but the biggest reason Tom Brady ended up beating him out was just because Brady was better in practice every day. He was more prepared. He was taking things more seriously. And I think JT needs to sort of adopt that mentality as he tries to regain this job. And Stetson Bennett's not going to give him an inch.
Yeah.
Because Stetson Bennett sort of knows what it's like to get benched, and that sucks. And he came out this year, has been a much better player than the one we saw a year ago. I know what Kirby Smart has said about that. Go back and compare the Kentucky game from last year to this year and how much better Stetson Bennett has looked. And look, if Stetson Bennett's the starting quarterback on Saturday, and I could still see a world where that is the case, I'm a lot more confident in what this Georgia team's going to be able to do this year than we were a season ago.
But let me bounce to a couple things on this really quick. Some people, I think, have the assumption that Smart has a bias in favor of Bennett because of how cool his story is. But the truth is, Connor, if that were true, then Smart would have given him more of a chance to win the starting job in 2021, given the way that he played in 2020. And Smart didn't do that. On an Atlanta radio interview, and we've played this audio within the last week, on an Atlanta radio interview last spring, Smart named JT Daniels the starting quarterback, knowing full well how Bennett had played the season ago. So this idea that Smart just can't help himself when it comes to Bennett because of how fun the narrative is, if that were true, then Smart would have given Bennett, I believe, more of a chance to be the starter prior to the season. They identified all the quarterbacks. They recognized Daniels as the better guy at the time, but either Bennett's gotten better, and I think that's true, but also Daniels has not been himself because he has, maybe up until now, just been injured.
The only thing Kirby Smart, I think, has a bias to within this team is just winning. Mm-hmm. It's what he wants to do. It's what he knows. And Stetson Bennett, the last 3 weeks, clearly with JT Daniels not healthy, has given Georgia a better chance to win. If JT Daniels is healthy, if he's 100% healthy, or at least as close as you can be to healthy at this point in the year, I think we're going to see him. But at the same point in time, if JT doesn't come out and practice well, if he's still rusty from not having thrown and not having taken the hits, I very little doubt that Kirby Smart's going to have any sort of second thoughts about putting Stetson Bennett out there if Bennett does, in fact, give Georgia a better chance to win on Saturday.
No, I think that's all really true. Good stuff. Thank you for being here as part of our Kroger Fresh Take here today. Obviously, we'll look forward great piece up comparing Dan Mullen and Kirby Smart here today at DawgNation.com. And I know you've got a lot of great things planned in the days to come there as well. And just really appreciate you being a part of our Kroger Fresh Take. Brand new studio here today, and good stuff all the way around.
Yep, as always, it was a pleasure, B.A.
Let's take a look around the rest of the league. This is SEC Through.
All right, really fun stuff from Connor Riley there on all of that with our Kroger Fresh Take. And I'll have some of Smart's words on the quarterback situation before we're done here in a bit. We'll do that as part of our program here today. But for now, though, let's get ready to roll into our SEC Through as we're cruising around the SEC, courtesy of our friends at Royal Caribbean. Of course, those Royal Caribbean ships are back on the seas again, which means you get a chance to take a wonderful vacation. A lot of you have been dying to do this. Either you haven't cruised in a while because the ships haven't been sailing and you're ready to get back out there, or some of you heard me talking about this like a year or so ago, and you're saying, boy, I was this close to being able to take my first cruise, didn't get a chance to do that. Let me tell you right now is the time. There's great savings, but also just great opportunities to take advantage of just as fun a vacation as you're going to be able to take. And so many of the really cool Royal Caribbean cruise ships are going to this private island that I've been telling you about, Perfect Day, Coco Cay. You got to understand something. This is a private island in the Bahamas. First of all, just stop right there. How much fun does that sound? But it actually gets even better than that, because for the Royal Caribbean folks who get a chance to go and visit there, you've got two completely different sides of the island. You've got the thrill side, the chill side. The thrill side has tallest water slide in North America, helium balloon that takes you up 450 feet in the air. You've got the chill side, which has like private floating cabanas, almost like a taste of Bora Bora there when you're on that side of the island, kicking back, relaxing, having a good time. Whichever side you choose, the thrill side, the chill side, taking a Royal Caribbean cruise ship to Perfect Day Coco Cay is just about as much fun as you can possibly have. And when you book your cruise vacation with Royal Caribbean, it's important to use folks who understand the all the intricacies of making the vacation as much fun for you as you possibly can. Expertise when it comes to Royal Caribbean. That's what our friends at the Cruise and Vacation Authority can provide for you. First of all, the owners are UGA grads, so that's kind of a cool thing. Dog alumni, always great to support them. And you can get in touch with them by checking out the website, tcava.com. That's tcava.com. Or you can give them a call, 770-952-8300. That's 770-952-8300. Friendly voice will greet you on the other side of the phone, and just tell them BA from DawgNation Daily said you take good care of them. And they would take good care of you and get you on one of these Royal Caribbean cruises here very, very soon as we head towards the end of this year, into the new year. Just a great time to do that. All right, a couple more things on Florida here for a moment as we're in our SEC Through and cruise around the SEC, courtesy of Royal Caribbean. And we'll probably examine this in greater detail as the shows roll on this week, but much the same way there are, a lot of questions about the Georgia quarterback situation. There are also a lot of questions about the Florida quarterback situation, too, between Anthony Richardson, who is no doubt the people's champ right now. Florida fans want AR-15 as the quarterback. They've seen enough from Emory Jones. And the fact of the matter is, I'm not going to pick on Jones too much, but Jones has just never quite blossomed into the guy that you once thought he could be. And boy, you want to talk about something that seems pretty foolish now. When Dan Mullen first took that Florida job in 2018, Emory Jones was the quarterback they identified. I mean, go back and read about this. I mean, they had a chance to have Matt Corral, and it seems like Mullen kind of chose Emory Jones instead. Man, how bad of a choice does that seem now? And Jones has just never quite been that guy. If he was, we probably never would have heard of Kyle Trask. But sometimes it just doesn't quite work out for you. And for Jones, whether at Florida or just in general as a college football player, it's just not working out. Now, same thing seemed true for Felipe Franks, and Franks went to Arkansas, kind of reinvented himself, showing that maybe the quarterback whisper, those whispering tones of Dan Mullen don't quite work the same with all quarterbacks, apparently. But Richardson's the guy that Florida fans seemingly want, and maybe that's the guy they'll get most of against Georgia on Saturday. There's also a case to be made here that, knowing that the Georgia game is likely not to go very well for you anyway, that you give Jones one more last stand here to prove something one way or another. You give enough of Anthony Richardson to make the case that Richardson's then your guy moving forward the rest of the season. By that point in time, the year's basically done, so you kind of wonder if that's a choice that Mullen can even make. But obviously, much the same way there's curiosity related to the Georgia quarterback, there's also a ton of curiosity related to the Florida quarterback going on Saturday there as well. The other issue that's kind of facing Florida right now is the fact that Todd Grantham's got questions coming up about his contract and the fact that his time at Florida could really be done at the end of this year. Dan Mullen sidestepped the chance to answer this, saying that he's not even really aware of what Grantham's current contract situation is. Grantham himself has been asked directly about this, and obviously the defensive results for Florida are not good. And it seems like for Todd Grantham, for a guy that's like coached basically everywhere, it seems like he spent the entirety of his coaching life kind of being on the hot seat. It's actually kind of amazing that a guy like this ends up on the hot seat every single year somehow, some way. But it certainly appears that Florida fans are just about exhausted with having to deal with the third and Grantham type stuff, but that is still ongoing. I'm only going to spend a couple of seconds on this because, frankly, it's just not really it's just kind of out of bounds for us on a typical day here. But there is a growing controversy with Brian Harsin at Auburn, where I guess December 8th is the deadline day here, where all Auburn University employees have to be vaccinated. And Harsin's been asked about that, and he took the question head on yesterday and said that he was unwilling to talk about it. And kind of unprompted, he also said, and I'm not even willing to talk about my own vaccination status on that. Now, listen, I'm not going to get into anything related to any of that other than to say this is a story that's probably going to get bigger. Now, what happens related to all of this, I don't really know. But for a guy in Harsin who's had some moments of success on the field for Auburn here this year, he's probably been the best, certainly first-year coach in the SEC, with apologies to Josh Heupel. But Harsin's probably been that guy, and right now Auburn has the look at times of an upper-tier team in the SEC West. So on the field, things have been more good than bad for Auburn this season. But off the field, it sounds like there's a little bit of a showdown brewing, and how all of this resolves itself, not quite sure yet, but this is not the last you're going to hear of that. Then one more SEC through story to give you here today. So some attention comes the way of Penn State coach James Franklin, who has changed agents here, bringing on the firm owned by Jimmy Sexton. Of course, you know Sexton as the agent to the Stars when it comes to all the big SEC coaches. And now James Franklin has taken on Sexton, his agent as well. And some people take this to mean, well, does this mean that James Franklin's on the move? Is James Franklin going to take one of these open jobs, whether it be LSU or USC or possibly even one of the jobs that comes open because of those other jobs? But here's my question on this. Did you see the Penn State-Illinois game on Saturday? I mean, have you seen what Franklin, for the most part, has been doing at Penn State? Is this a guy right now that ought to be getting any consideration, certainly for the LSU job? USC job's a little bit different right now. I don't think the USC job's as good as the LSU job is right now. But for all the talk that Franklin seems to generate in terms of, which big opening is he going to take? I mean, do you think that Penn State fans would even be shedding tears if Franklin were to leave there? I sort of get the impression they wouldn't. I also sort of get the impression that maybe Franklin's doing all of this as a way of getting a better contract at Happy Valley, and maybe that's the way this resolves itself. But there are a few guys that seem to always be on the there's the hot seat of a guy getting fired, but there's also, I guess, the hot list of the next name to get the next big job. And for whatever reason, Franklin seems to always be on that list, but for the life of me, I'm never quite sure why he seems to generate all that buzz. But for now, we'll make that your SEC through cruise around the SEC, courtesy of Royal Caribbean. Let me also give a quick shout out to my friends at Marco's Pizza. Obviously, a lot of sports on, including tonight with the baseball, football going through the weekend, and Marco's Pizza pairs great with all of that. Whether it be the golden brown crust baked perfectly every time, the 3 cheeses blended, melted together, those authentic old world toppings that are always so delicious and enjoyable. Marco's Pizza provides all that for you. It's getting close to lunchtime for me, so you better believe some Marco's Pizza would sound pretty good for me, and it can sound pretty good for you there as well. So check it out, including great savings right now. You can get a bundle of a large one-topping pizza, pizza bowl, which is like the pizza flavor without the crust, or cheesy bread. It's all just $21.99. Check that out today, Marcos.com or the Marcos app for that. Marcos Pizza, pizza lovers get it. All right, here on DawgNation Daily, presented by ESOG, you heard Connor and I talking about the quarterback situation for Georgia before. I want you to hear Kirby Smart now on this, because there was one comment in particular from Smart. Now, there were like 3 different things he said about the battle between Bennett and Daniels, to the extent that it is a battle, during his press conference yesterday. But there was one thing in particular that he said that I thought summed up the whole thing pretty well here. You know, this idea of, would you rotate quarterbacks? Would you play one game, one the next? Or would you play them both during the same game? And Smart, in this comment, echoes a couple of other things that he already said during yesterday's press conference, but also really hammering home the point that we made a very, very specific case for this past week, that it actually comes down to one thing mattering more than anything else. This is good stuff from Kirby Smart on exactly how the quarterback situation at Georgia is going to be decided. This from yesterday.
I'll say it again. I'm really okay with whoever the best guy that gives us the best chance to win is, and that's based on practice and health. And it'll continue to be that way the rest of the year. It's not, the question of are you okay rotating them is really not relevant if they're not both completely healthy. So I just go off, are they healthy, and who gives us the best chance to win based on what we think we need to do offensively against their defense.
So I think there's a lot to take away from Smart on that. He says, and he has said over and over again, that practice would be the determining factor. Practice is how that's going to be decided. We told you that last week. Even in the ESPN.com article on Thursday that got so much attention, so much of the other quotes got pulled out and used, but the quote we pulled out and used on this show last week was Smart. It was buried at the end of the article, but it was actually the most important thing being said, which was that how these guys perform during practice is what the deciding factor is going to be. Smart asked about wide receivers last week, saying, you've got to be able to show me during practice that you're healthy enough to play. And if Smart is to be taken at his word that quarterbacks evaluated the same way all other positions are, then the same thing is true again. This is actually not confusing. There actually is no lack of clarity here. This is not a controversy. This is a very clear-eyed situation that Georgia had a starting quarterback at the beginning of the season, and he's a good one, but he has been hurt. The guy that Georgia has put in place of the original starter while the starter's been hurt has played really well. He was thought of as the lesser of the two quarterbacks before the season began, but he has played really well in the spot that he's in now. And during practice here this week, can the previous starter show that he's now healthy enough to overtake the guy for the job that he overtook during the offseason? That's as simple and straightforward as all of this gets. That the onus is really on Daniels during this time to regain the reins of the team, to remind everybody, to make it obvious that he is the rightful starting quarterback for this team. That was once true. Smart named him the starter going into spring practice, something that Kirby has not typically done a lot at his time at UGA coach. But injuries do change things. And how much has the Daniels injury, and the extent to which it might still be lingering, how much does that change this situation? As Smart said 3 different times yesterday, as we said all week last week here on this show, practice will be the determining factor in all of that. Hey, one more thing to tell you about before we wrap up today. So tonight obviously gets going with the Atlanta Braves in the World Series, and one of the things that was so cool, and I tried to do this on Saturday, but I had family stuff and wasn't able to do that, the way in which Braves fans are now congregating around the Battery Atlanta when the Braves are in Houston, for Game 1, Game 2 of the World Series. You see all the Braves fans showing up there at the Battery and having a good time doing that. Now, the watch parties are actually going on whether the Braves are at home or on the road, gathering that lawn right there just behind the ballpark in that Battery area. Got the huge screen TV showing all of that. This is a great time to be with other Braves fans and enjoy the vibe. Of course, the restaurants and bars around there all showing the game there too. There's really no more exciting place to be on one of these World Series game nights than right there at the Battery Atlanta. The atmosphere is electric. So check it out. You've probably seen the videos of the celebrations when you have the home runs, things like that. The cool wide-angle shot of all the fans celebrating. The best way to be, especially for Game 1 tonight, best way to be with a bunch of Braves fans is right there in the Battery Atlanta for all of that. So make sure you check that out as we get ready around here to certainly root on the Atlanta Braves as they hopefully make their one towards a World Series title, Georgia making a run towards a national championship. It's quite a fun fall to be a sports fan around these parts here right now. All right, so get ready to wrap up. Let's go wide angle for a second on this and give folks a chance to see all the Gator hater paraphernalia that we've got going on here. Obviously getting ready for the world's largest outdoor cocktail party on Saturday, and it's during this portion of our show we always remind you that a good Georgia fan is a Gator hater first and foremost. You always get that. This has been our Gator hater roll call all year long. Getting folks fired up and ready for the game. One of the guys who's been such a great contributor for us during all of this has been our buddy Mad Dog. We'll give him a golden shoe here today there as well. I love Kirby Smart with that sleeper hold, choke hold on Dan Mullen here, saying when you plan on forcing the Gators into submission. That's a Gator hater golden shoe indeed for our buddy Mad Dog Really good work on all of that. And by the way, as we inch closer to the cocktail party on Saturday, now just 4 days away from watching Georgia get some revenge over those lousy, stinking Gators. Can't wait for that. We'll see you tomorrow. DawgNation Daily, presented by Engineered Solutions of Georgia. And on video. Time now for our R.S. Andrews cool down. Air conditioning, heating, plumbing, electric. R.S. Andrews, the one you turn to for all of that. You can find them online at rsandrews.com. Really good stuff related to that. And you can put me back on the tight shut again so people can see my handsome face. But wanted to give a little shout out there at the end of the show to the Gator hater paraphernalia we've got, getting ready to rock and roll with everything else. We'll get your comments. We'll probably bounce through these pretty quick today. But nonetheless, really good stuff all the way around, and I certainly appreciate that. So at DawgNation.com, Facebook, YouTube, everything else, I'll give you a chance to weigh in on your thoughts on today's show and fun stuff all the way around. Let me start at DawgNation.com, and we'll see what folks have to say over here. Greg Blue says a good-looking shirt there today, too. Yeah, this is from our friends at the UGA bookstore. I feel like I look better in black. And so you got like the black with the red trim here and the nice black-on-black Georgia logo. So I appreciate that. Thank you. Mike Q says he has got a friend who's a Florida fan. He thinks they are going to run all over us. What do you think? I think your friend's going to be pretty disappointed. But listen, I got no beef. When we see this with a lot of the SEC fans going into a game, like Arkansas fans did this, Kentucky fans kind of did this. It's like your only chance to crow and talk trash is before the game because you know the game's not going to go the way you want it to. Like I've got some neighbors, Auburn fans, and they're giving me a lot of grief going into the game because that's their chance to do that, right? It's just kind of a fun thing to do. So while I think your friend is going to be sadly mistaken about the results of Saturday's game, deep down he already knows that. Deep down he's just trying to get his jabs in while he can. There's no chance to celebrate after the game, so you might as well do your flexing before the game, and that's kind of an old SEC tradition, I guess, in a lot of ways. All right, over here on Facebook and YouTube and everything else, let's see what our Facebook folks are saying here today. You'll have to give me a minute to pull these up, and I apologize. And your thoughts on the quarterback situation, we'll look forward to taking those from you. You want to weigh in on some of the recruiting stuff from a little earlier, we'll give you a chance to do that there too. Kevin Mills says, are we in white or red jerseys on Saturday? That is a good question. I believe Georgia wore red jerseys last year, so I think it should be white jerseys on Saturday. The reason why I think that is because I'm pretty sure I posted a photo yesterday from my podcast of Zamir White wearing a red jersey from last year's game. So I think it should be white, but I could be wrong. Jesse Dellinger Jr. giving you the Allen Iverson. We're talking about practice line. Yeah, I mean, that's ultimately what kind of matters here is, and Smart's made it clear that we are literally talking about practice, which is great. Isaac Cruz says, what are the chances that UGA's picking up Walter Nolan? Yeah, I've heard buzz lately about Nolan other places. And at a certain point, just given the win with Big Bear Alexander, you're left to wonder how much room there even is to win with a guy like Nolan. Not to say that Georgia wouldn't make some room for him if possible, but Nolan's been one of the more unorthodox, unpredictable recruits in this 2021 cycle, or I should say 2022 cycle. So, from that standpoint, not an easy guy to predict, but it seems like right now Nolan's probably trending other places. More comments kind of rolling through here. Rick Martin pointing out something we talked about briefly yesterday, which is that, and I saw where the Florida Gators Reddit page had this, that I guess every other time that the Braves have been in the World Series since being in Atlanta, that goes back to 1966, Florida has also won that year's cocktail party. So that would have been 95, that would have been 96, that would have been 99, sorry, no, it would be 91, 92, 95, 96, and 99. So the previous 5 instances when the Braves have been to the World Series, Florida also won in the cocktail party. That was also a time in which Florida had a lot of success against Georgia, so maybe that means something, maybe it doesn't. I mean, I'll always have kind of bittersweet memories of the 1995 night in which the Braves won their only world championship in Atlanta because earlier that day, Georgia got beaten bad by Florida in the only game in my lifetime that's taken place in Athens. So, from that standpoint, I do have bittersweet memories of Georgia, Florida, Braves World Series being on the same day, but that was actually coincide with a good Braves moment, but a bad UGA moment. So I do have some memories of that. David West having some fun over here. You love to be able to see that. Matt Rugavina says that was an obscure and worthless statistic. Probably so. Travis McCullough says Florida's the home team on Saturday. Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. It becomes very hard for me to remember stuff like that. Caleb Janney says the line 14.5. I actually haven't shopped it last 24 hours or so, but the last time I saw it, that's about what it was. Keith Fold says this is not the 90s anymore. Dogs on top, and I love that. Kevin Cook says Florida owned us in the 90s, but not now. Yeah, I mean, Florida had a great run going there for a while. And that's one of the reasons why Georgia building its own great run is so important. You know, a lot of us who are a little older have long memories. And, getting a run for the Dogs going that can kind of rival and resemble what Florida once did to UGA, that's pretty important to me. I would say that's pretty important indeed. It's also worth pointing out, I played you a little bit of a clip from Pat Dooley, the veteran Florida reporter from the Feinbaum Show yesterday. I played that for you on the show a little bit earlier. One of the things that Dooley also said, and I don't believe I included this in the clip that we played for you here, but one of the things that Dooley also said is that current recruits don't remember Tim Tebow. And that's absolutely 100% true. And that's the only thing that you need to say back when these Florida fans want to throw 1980 in your face. 1980. It's been 1980 since Georgia won a national championship. That's factually accurate. Georgia fans are obviously bothered by that. Georgia's hungry to win another national championship. But if you're looking for a rebuttal to Florida fans about that, you can tell them that much the same way the current crop of players maybe don't have great memories of Herschel Walker, they actually don't remember Tim Tebow either. That's how long ago it's been since Florida has been relevant on the national stage there as well. And to someone like me in my early 40s, then Florida's success seems more recent than Georgia's does. But if you're 18 right now, both of those things, the glory days of Florida and the glory days of Georgia, they both happened before I was old enough to follow college football. So from that standpoint, it's not the checkmate in the argument that some of those lousy, stinking Gators might think it is. Eric DeVornsey checks in to say that if we beat Bama in the SEC championship game, look for an explosion in recruiting. That will knock them out of the playoff, and the tides will be shifting, pun intended. You may be right about that. I also thought it was kind of interesting. Have you noticed that lately things are not going super great for one of those big-time Alabama 2021 signees, Ajayi Hall, wide receiver who I always kind of liked? Seems like he's not super happy in Tuscaloosa right now. Now, I can't really say as to why or what's going on there, but can't help but notice. Chris Slim White says, I just got great news. Just got a new job. Chris, that is awesome to be able to hear. And I got to tell you this. There is nothing that makes me happier when y'all pop in the comment section to celebrate some good news. Because we do, even though face-to-face, in person, I don't get a chance to meet very many of you, but we do get to know each other here in this comment section each and every day. So when you have a baby or a grandbaby being born, when you're celebrating a milestone, or when you get a new job, the fact that you would think to come in here and let us know your good news, that makes me very happy. So, Chris, I am truly, truly thrilled for you. What a great time to get a great new job, and I know you're going to be incredibly successful at that. So congratulations. I mean that truly and sincerely. That is a great thing to be able to see. All right. Over here on YouTube for a moment. Green Soldier says Paul Feinbaum touting Alabama. I mean, admittedly, it's been hard not to tout them as of late. I like this. This is funny from Jay Shipes. He says there's going to be a surge in popularity for NASCAR after the Iron Bowl this year. That's actually pretty funny, meaning that Alabama fans might have to turn their attention to another sport if the Crimson Tide's not playing great. Bubby Dean says Florida fans are hanging their hopes on the wheel route. And listen, I'm sure they probably are. And you better believe that Georgia's probably practiced that thing 1,000 times. And you better believe, if not more, you better believe that Georgia's out there looking to do that. And I was also kind of thinking about this. I think it's something that Mullen said yesterday made me think about this. There really wasn't a lot of defense being played in college football last year. In other words, Mullen kind of shrugged off some of their defensive struggles. I'm trying to remember exactly what was said, and I hope I'm not mischaracterizing, but that, last year there just wasn't a ton of defense. Like, the point I'm building to is this. The more removed from 2020 you get, the more do you start to wonder, was this really just kind of an anomalous season where the things that happened don't have a lot of relevance for the future? In other words, and as a Georgia fan, you hope this is the case, Georgia got torched defensively in its biggest games. Is that the kind of thing that you can just kind of chalk up to a pandemic year and just basically compartmentalize that and then forget about that? And I was also thinking about, like, who was the one team last year that actually surprisingly played more defense than we're used to seeing them play? If you'll search the annals of your mind, I think you'll say, you know what, Oklahoma's actually a pretty good defensive team a year ago. And, like, they really haven't done that this year on the field. They've been more like the Oklahoma they used to be, which would give more credence to the idea that, hey, maybe in terms of establishing precedent and maybe in terms of predictive measures, maybe some of the stuff that happened in 2020 just wasn't real. Now, Alabama was truly the best team in the country, and they deserve the national championship, and I'm not taking that away from them, and I'm not really trying to excuse the loss that Georgia had to Florida. But the way that Georgia got beat up on that wheel route a year ago, is there a chance that that's just reflective of the weirdness of practice, the lack of meeting time, and all that was related to that? Well, Saturday would be a day for Georgia to show that, hey, you may have gotten us in a pandemic year when the stadium was empty, but once this place is full again, once we're playing real football again, the real dominant team emerges once again. That's obviously a favorable narrative for UGA, but maybe one that could pop up there. Let's see what else over in the YouTube side of things. Tripp says, I wish Kendall Milton was healthy enough to get in and bust a few grills on Saturday. Yeah, it's a disappointment for Milton right now. Smart addressed him yesterday, saying that he's definitely going to miss the Florida game, and then beyond that, you have to kind of wait and see. G. Greg's Bama Boy says, be humble until you raise that trophy up. Anything can happen in the next few weeks. Totally fair. Totally fair. I saw where ESPN's SP Plus only gives Georgia about a 38% chance of winning the rest of its regular season games, that anything can still happen. And if you believe the math people, which on this particular issue, I'm not quite so sure I believe them all that much, but if you believe the math people, there's a better chance than not that Georgia still loses a game. So maintaining a level of focus is still a really important thing. And in this particular case, I don't believe that G. Grace is trolling by saying that. I think he's telling the truth. Let's see what else. Blake Eckel says, if Georgia dominates Florida, will Dan Mullen get his NFL wish? Obviously, there was a push last season to connect Dan Mullen to some open jobs there. I think that more has come out on this as expected, that most of this was coming from Dan Mullen's own camp, that Mullen may have gotten an interview with the New York Jets, but that may have only been a favor to Mullen just to let him say that he was interviewed by the New York Jets. He was in the midst of a pretty protracted contract extension battle with his employer at the time. By the way, good to see Cody Ledoux checking back in. We haven't seen Cody here in a while. I hadn't seen Cody. He says, not trolling, but Jordan Davis doesn't deserve Heisman hype. But see, Cody, you're using the typical definition on all of this. You're using the old school definition, which is, hey, who's the player that's putting up the best highlights, who's the player that's putting up the most eye-popping stats. But we've said over and over again that the push for Davis is a non-traditional Heisman push. He's an outsider candidate, if you will. And if there was an obvious favorite for the Heisman Trophy, it'd be more difficult to do this. It would not be as easy to make the case for Davis if there was a quarterback currently running away with the award. But right now, the quarterback generating the most buzz is a quarterback that wasn't even the starter for his team at the beginning of the season. And if you want to say that Will Anderson is, and I'm assuming this is the direction you're going, I'm going to read your mind here for a moment. If you're going to say that Will Anderson from Alabama is putting up better stats, I don't deny that. Will Anderson's a great player. He's a terrific individual player, but he doesn't have the same level of meaning that Davis does for a defense that this year has been better. The Georgia defense has been better than the Alabama defense. And Davis stands as the representation for why that is. So everything about Davis's Heisman candidacy is non-traditional. We don't deny that. And the non-traditional nature of it makes it a longer shot to occur. Don't deny that either. But as of right now, it is happening. Tripp, how about it says Nakobe the Hall Monitor Dean? That's a good nickname. Green Soldier says this is funny. He says, does Florida end up as the fourth best team in the East in the recruiting rankings? How do they recover from this major dip? It's a very fair question, Green Soldier. That is a very fair question. These are tough times for Florida on the recruiting trail, and hopefully Georgia can make the time seem even tougher on the field on Saturday. Wayne Mohammed wondering about Dejon Edwards getting more carries. It's a great question. Army Dog Charlie says, do you know that Cody's a troll, right? I actually don't mind Cody. For whatever reason, Cody and G. Grace and like the Alabama guys that come in here, for whatever reason, I think I don't think Cody's a bad commenter. Do you think he's a bad commenter? I don't think he's a bad commenter. He may be a troll, and G. Grace likes stirring y'all up, but the truth is y'all like that. Y'all'd be sad if they went away. So you can say what you want about Cody, but I don't think Cody's a bad commenter. Now, if he's got comments that I'm not seeing, then I reserve the right to change my mind. But I don't think he's a bad commenter. Green Soldier says, I'm being serious. Missouri might beat Florida in recruiting. Yeah. I mean, on Peachtree TV, Friday night, we got a 4-star quarterback in that game, Sam Horn, that's going to Missouri. Obviously, Luther Burden, they were like, 14th in the composite team ranking right now? Missouri's doing a pretty good job on the recruiting trail. Thomas Tyson says, it's almost as if Dan Mullen's a bad recruiter. We've only been saying that for years now. And Thomas Tyson, you're 100% right about that. 100% right. All right, one more trip around the Facebook and DawgNation.com. We're going to get out of here. Wayne Kirkland says Florida will have the best offense we faced. Don't disagree with that. You got to be ready for that on Saturday. They put up some explosive plays, and it's Georgia's job to stop that. You're not wrong for saying that. Miriam Martin Corbin says she would not miss Cody Ledoux. So there you go. Cody, you've run afoul of Miriam Martin Corbin. You better be very careful with that. Lucy Bowers-Boykin says UGA has had a long run before the Gators finally got theirs. Their first win before their streak, they didn't even know how to celebrate. I believe Georgia still owns the record over the Swamp Lizards. You're right about that, Lucy. The all-time record is in the favor of Georgia here, and that's the kind of thing that you got to be able to celebrate, and you got to be able to protect that at all costs. You're 100% right. Bill Sanders says that Florida's now down in the 30s in the recruiting rankings. All right, back at the DawgNation.com for 1 minute. Over here at DawgNation.com. Chris says, ain't no sneaking Gators beating us this year. Chris, I love that. Georgiana Olive says, Alabama fans need a massive mental health intervention. Their team does not win. There are so many people whose identities seem to be totally wrapped up in that team. And boy, it'd be nice to see Georgia take them down a peg for sure. Nice to see that for sure. Georgiana Olive also says no reason to create things to be anxious about. You're probably right about that. Greg Blue says, will Trevor Lawrence, the Jacksonville resident, beat the game on Saturday? Jesse S. also says, credit BA with stoking the Georgia-Florida rivalry to new heights and credit him for getting the 99 Heisman recognition. I appreciate the kind of words, Jesse. Thanks for saying that. And I got to tell you, when we started pushing the Georgia-Florida rivalry several years ago, as hard as we have, I never would have imagined it would have worked out as well as it has, that this has really become something. And I love it. Obviously, we love being a Gator hater around here. It's one of the most fun things we get a chance to do. And going out there and taking it from those lousy, stinking Gators on Saturday, man, it doesn't get more fun than that. I can promise you that. All right, good stuff from us here today. I should say good stuff from all of you with the comments. Thanks for being here as part of our R.S. Andrews Cool Down. You can find them online, rsandrews.com, for your air conditioning, heating, plumbing, and electric needs. Let me also say this, that there's a really fun pull-out section in the AJC that I want you to see, celebrating the Braves, previewing the Braves, the start of the World Series night. It's a 16-page pullout. Also, don't forget, today's the day to get the commemorative cover from when the Braves won the National League Championship Series going back to Saturday. That's there as well. You can also order one online, ajc.com/Braves, for more than that. Ton of coverage in Houston for the Braves in the World Series. So make sure you check out all of that online, ajc.com, and become a subscriber to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution to get the most and up-to-date Braves coverage. Of course, ajc.com to find out more details about that there as well. Thanks for being here for our R.S. Andrews Cool Down. We'll see you back here tomorrow for DawgNation Daily, presented by Engineered Solutions of Georgia. And we'll look forward to talking to you then, everybody.